Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing good.
That's great, Matt. We're here once again, Matt, in the Mistake Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And, Matt, I come to you this week with a mistake.
Okay.
As per our name suggests. And Matt, I've mentioned it on the show, a few times here and there where you reside in the Saturday morning arcade clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I have our sister HQ. And, I'm still in the process of moving some stuff from the clubhouse adjacent area to the Mistake Zone HQ. You know what I mean? And part of that moving process is taking my beloved Nendoroids with me.
Okay.
And I'm not really that equipped to take all of them at once. So I've been doing it in stages, Matt. And this week I was trying to, round it all off and bring not maybe the last batch or the second last batch with me to the Mistake Zone HQ. And so I'm packing up my Nendoroids, kind of trying to put them in their default state, their default pose, and then boxing them up and putting it in a bigger box. Matt, I get to Hafumi from New Game. And Hafumi, this Nendoroid is a special one for me, Matt, because this was the first Nendoroid that I purchased. This was my gateway to the mistakes that, I have with Nendoroids. And as my first Nendoroid, Matt, she's been sitting on my shelf the longest. And, I'm not... Because you know me, Matt, I open my Nendoroids just to display. I have no real intention to reselling them because when I purchase a Nendoroid, I purchase it to own and to display it, just to generally enjoy them. So Hafumi's been the one who's been in my, the IKEA detail case the longest. And when you're in that display case the longest, sometimes the light might shine on you, of course. And sometimes when lights shine on, plastic, or whatever Nendoroids are made of, they distort a bit.
Oh no. Sure.
So Matt, I needed to take off Hafumi's head so I could properly replace her arms. And Matt, I noticed that Hafumi's head was more snug than all the other Nendoroids I was boxing previously, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna keep pulling. I'm gonna keep pulling.
Okay.
Matt,
Jared, I'm scared.
I shouldn't have kept pulling.
Oh no.
Because Matt, I pulled in such a way where, as you know, with Nendoroids, you have the head and you have a neck joint, which a neck joint is this kind of ball joint with two pegs attached to them. And then you put one of the pegs in the body and then one of the pegs in the head, obviously. And Matt, the peg in Hafumi's body snapped.
Damn.
And the peg in Hafumi's head is distorted, so the rest of the joint peg won't come out. And now I have a snapped Hafumi Nendoroid.
Dude.
And if you go on I forget the community manager, but in their community blog post, there is instructions of, hey, what happens if I snap my neck joint? What do I do? How do I retrieve it? And I pulled up the step-by-step process, the guide. I need to order the proper, hand, not necessarily the drill, but the thing you go in, you drill a little hole into the peg in the body. You then screw in a screw hook into it, and then you gently pull out after you blow a hairdryer. Same thing with the head joint, because that's the reason that's being distorted. So you have to kind of blow dry that a bit. And then once you'd probably take it out. You have to use the screw again just to kind of reshape it into a hole again. Or I can just find a replacement piece for that neck part that can joins everything. And luckily, Nendoroids come with extra neck joints for you to replace, but it's the it's the actual neck part, or I guess the socket that you put inside the headpiece that you put the joint through, which might be distorted, and I might have to find a new thing.
Oh, I see.
Matt, just Hafumi being my first Nendoroid, and it breaking like that broke my heart because my sister, I was there and my sister was like, oh my God, like, I'll just buy you a new one. Not that she can actively find a Hafumi Nendoroid out in the wild. But you know what I mean, Matt? This is, there's sentimental, I attach some sort of sentimental feelings towards this Hafumi Nendoroid. And I feel like, okay, this is a DIY project that I can finally, take on myself, just do some Nendoroid maintenance. And who knows, maybe it's a good time to kind of clean a lot of my figures as well. Because, you are supposed to clean them every couple of, preferably every couple of weeks, couple of months, but you know me, Matt, and my mistakes. But as someone who was holding just a broken Hafumi Nendoroid, I have to ask you, Matt, as a fellow collector, have you found yourself in situations where, you're moving things around, you're reorganizing, and you might have had a figure casualty? And if it has happened to you, how do you kind of approach it depending on the severity?
I don't think that I've ever had anything like too important to me break.
Yeah.
But I have had that point where, because Jan, I make a lot of Gundam models and just like models in general. And I have hit the point where I have dropped one and it's shattered into all its components, but it's still rebuildable.
Okay.
But man, Jaren, when you drop like kind of one of those things, I ended up actually kind of just putting it all into a Ziploc bag for the better part of a year. And I had to go online and find instructions on how to rebuild this thing.
How did that go? Were you successful in your rebuild?
Yeah. I ended up rebuilding. It was actually the, I don't know if you remember that I bought this year, but it was the Lego Bastion that I bought like a while back.
Oh, yeah?
I knocked it off my desk and I had to end up rebuilding that thing.
You hate to see it. But Matt, in part of my, my moving process here into the Mistake Zone HQ, I totally forgot that I bought a bunch of, not necessarily Gundam model kits, but like these robot model kits that I've been on the back burner for, had them for a few years now, haven't gotten a chance to put them together. But I feel like since we're in the summer season, not only are there summer season anime, but I feel like we need some summer season hobbies. And I thought, hey, maybe this is a good time to put together these robot models. And not as someone who's a first time model builder, what are some tips that you have for me? And are there any specific tools you would recommend? Or what are the must need tools and kind of recommendations and tips that you have for a first time robot model builder?
For these models, is it the kind that's kind of like on these sprues and then you kind of take them off and put them all back together?
Yes.
Okay, Jaren, you need to get yourself a pair of hobby cutters and an X-Acto knife. I think those are like two of the best tools. Because one, you use the kind of like hobby clipper to clip the point where they're attached to the sprue, and then you use the, what do you call it? The X-Acto knife to kind of cut off the remaining part of the sprue, so you can get it, as nice as possible without getting it as close, or without like having it show.
Right.
And Jared, I think one of the most unexpected tools I ended up using in model building is kind of like those multi-sided nail buffers. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. I think I do. I might need to find a picture of this, but how has those been handy for you?
It's okay. For when you're kind of like doing your nails, right? There's a kind of it's almost a spongy rectangular prism that has increasingly fine grits of it's not sandpaper, but like, it's that sort of thing.
Yeah, just basically a nail filer, correct?
Yeah, it's basically like really soft nail file that like gradually gets more and more fine, and kind of having that to kind of run over the points where there's like seams or like kind of those like parts you just like nip off the sprues is very nice because of that like slightly increasing grit makes it nice and smooth, and like it really removes that part of the distortion of really seeing it as a figure.
Okay. And, so far we have hobby pliers, or we have hobby pliers, we have an X-Acto knife, and a, I guess, good nail file or something similar on that vein. Okay.
And I think the last thing I like think is like a really huge kind of change in the quality of your model for very little effort is panel lining. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Jared.
I am certainly not.
Okay, so there's this concept in, I guess, like Gundam building, and I guess model building in general, where there's going to be like kind of fine details, like, and in terms of Gundams, it's called panel lining because it's just like, oh, the metal panels that are like, you know, kind of dividing all the points on the Gundam, where they're not actually separate parts, but it's just like slightly engraved into the kind of model itself. Like just taking, what most people do is they'll take like a very thin marker and kind of just run over that area.
Okay, yeah.
Which really brings out that detail. But like what I prefer to do is you take some really watered down black paint and you kind of just take a little bit onto a brush and you just dip it into the panel line and just water. What's the term here? It's not osmosis, but like, you know how water kind of capillary action, I think. No, that would just be for plants. But like the equivalent of that kind of just draws it all into the panel line itself and it fills it in for you. And then once it's dry, you just like kind of wipe off the one that's not like inside the panel. It's kind of like grouting, I guess, actually.
Huh.
But,
this is pretty intense, Matt, but also it sounds oddly satisfying too. Since you know, you have a few builds under your belt. Do you find it just something relaxing? When you're building a new model, Matt, is it something you put a podcast to, or is it full concentration? How do you hit your, I guess, for lack of a better term, Zen moment when it comes to model building?
I think it's definitely just a podcast thing for me. I like to have a podcast going, like to have like, you know, the, what do you call it, the ceiling fan on, windows open, and kind of just like, you know, go at it for a while and just like lock myself in.
Matt, that sounds like a good summer afternoon. But since we're on the topic now, Matt, what was your latest build that you've done, and how do you think it turned out?
The latest model that I built, Jaren, is the Sakura Densha Book Nook. I don't know if you've ever seen these kind of things before, Jaren. They're like about the size of a book on one side, and they're a lot thicker, maybe, I don't know, a half foot thick. And they are made to be placed inside a bookshelf. So it kind of is a little model inside of a bookshelf.
Yeah.
And the one that I built is a actual kind of just, it's just like a train going past a sakura tree in a Japanese looking city. And
I feel like we actually got something similar to this, maybe like the entry level of these miniature kits. It's those wooden, essentially we got some for like Pokemon, for like Ghibli films, for Spy Family, where it's these, I guess, iconic scenes, or, you know, just iconic scenes, iconic images from all these different works, and then you layer them with like wooden, like the panels or whatever.
Oh, like a shadow box sort of thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a bunch of those, and yeah, I haven't got around to those yet because I think that's a fun, you know, late night activity that I want to get around to. But yeah, just seeing this, Matt, this looks pretty gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think this was like one of the more recent ones that I've worked on that's made out of like wood instead of plastic.
Yeah.
And I definitely broke one, I think, major piece on this.
Oh no. Okay, what happened?
Jaren, I sent you a picture of this. Maybe we can also put it on the blog post as well.
Yeah.
But there is a part where there is a bridge, or a balcony that's overlooking a river.
Yes.
Right? And on this balcony, there are kind of two poles going down that are the supports for this balcony. And I snapped one of those supports trying to get it into the thing. But Jaren, I engineered my way into just super gluing it all back together, and
Okay.
it is able to support itself again.
Alrighty.
But yeah,
So,
this is
as
the
you
yeah.
said, this is wood based.
Mm-hmm.
Closing up the conversation here, winding down. Matt, as
Mm-hmm.
someone who has handled wood and has handled plastic, do you have a preference? Do you have is I'm assuming they both have their own set of challenges, but
Mm-hmm.
what do you typically like to work with? And I guess how bad, because you told us with your wood diorama that you just
Mm-hmm.
made, what was the worst mistake that has happened to you when it came to building?
I think that just snapping apart is always the worst one
Yeah.
because like once you like snap in the wrong way, you really are just in a kind of panic on how am I going to fix this, and is it going to matter if I maybe skip this piece, or like how much is it gonna like deteriorate from the whole thing. And Jaren, one thing about this book nook is that it is also electronic, which
Okay.
this was the first wood based model that I ever built that had a electronic component to it. Because this is a book nook thing and it has a ceiling to it, it is obviously going to be dark inside. So they have a light bulb or a tiny like light bulb at the top, and having to set up the wiring in this kind of wooden enclosure is very, for me, like I've done wiring setup before, so it's not that that was hard. It was just in my mind the mental thought of me, oh no, what if I mess up and
Right, right,
I
right.
like cause a spark in here and I just light this thing on fire the first time I turn it on. It was a
Luckily,
very
that didn't
nerve wracking for
happen.
me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And Matt, I'm looking at the Amazon link you sent me. I'm not sure how applicable this is when we let our friends listen in on this, but you can apply a $6 coupon. Not bad, Matt. Not
Oh yeah, that's
bad.
pretty good. That's pretty good.
But yeah, Matt, I guess to the first question, do you have a preference between plastic and wooden from your building experience?
Oh yeah, I think I just prefer plastic just because it's a bit more sturdy than wood.
Right.
Because the wood that they use for this is usually the kind of it's like that kind of like wood that's like just like a bunch of layers of very thin wood put together. So it's
Right,
a
right,
little
right.
bit like flaky.
Yeah.
But for the
Okay.
most part, plastic is like one solid. For the most part, like one solid piece, so you don't have to deal with that sort of thing.
Okay. And finally,
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I told you my first Nendoroid was Hafumi from New Game. Matt,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember your first DIY build?
I think it was like Gundam, like an X-wing Gundam or something
Mhm.
like that. And that thing is long gone. I'm pretty sure that it's like trapped in the basement somewhere.
Oh no. Maybe one day you can dig it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with a lot of builds, you do have that freedom of customization to a certain degree, especially
Yeah.
if you really want to go into it. Have
Mm-hmm.
you ever gone down that route of really customizing something to, you know, so it doesn't look like what the base model looks like? Have you done anything to, my go-to is, have you ever made a Hatsune Miku Gundam or something similar to that?
I've never like hardcore changed any of my models. Like I've never added any components. The most I've done is do a like full color scheme change on my Gundams.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
no Gundam cosplay yet, Matt?
No Gundam cosplay yet. No.
One day, though. One day.
One
But
day.
that,
One day. One day. Mm-hmm.
that was a insightful look into some of our hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
My existential dread of, oh no, maybe I am treating that
Mm-hmm.
when I was holding my Snap Tofumi Nendoroid in my hand, I was
Uh-huh.
thinking, what if this was Toy Story? What
Oh,
if
man.
all my Nendoroids on the shelf that remained on the shelf was
Mhm.
looking at me holding my, beheaded Hafumi and just sulking on my bed.
Man.
And that
Uh-huh.
that would be horrifying to me. Matt,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if your collections in the Saturday morning arcade clubhouse were Toy Story-fied or whatever,
Uh-huh.
how do you think they would react to you breaking your wooden support in your diorama?
Honestly, I don't think they would have cared that much, Jen. I feel like I've accidentally broken enough stuff, and okay, Jen, and I think there's also the what do you call it? the mental relief of my toys seeing me rebuild or like try to fix it. Like
Okay.
I wasn't maliciously doing. I wasn't sitting, you know?
Okay. Damn. So you are proactive, and they respect
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Likewise,
Mhm.
they saw me try to tug at Hafumi's neck joint, realized I couldn't do anything, and stick her back in the box, and then put her in another box.
Oh man. Jared, I feel bad for the like toys and stuff that I put into boxes into the closet and stuff.
Now, this isn't Toy Story 3, where they're given to a new home and new friends.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
sealed away in our degenness.
Mhm.
And Matt,
Mhm.
that's sometimes how it goes.
Uh-huh.
So, Matt,
Mhm.
speaking about our mistakes when it comes to our hobbies, Matt,
Mhm. Mhm.
considering one of the biggest summer events for our gaming hobby happened, I feel like I made the mistake last week of not, consuming all the different directs, showcases, press conferences. And I feel like I was ill equipped last week where
Mhm.
we there was so much news, so much game reveals, so many game updates that we didn't touch upon. So I feel like this week we can use this little corner to kind of highlight a few more games from the not E3 season that really caught our attention.
Mhm.
And Matt, when I was going through the Microsoft, showcase, we
Yes.
finally got a glimpse of Fable.
Mhm.
This one is coming from Playground Games. We know Playground from the Forza Horizon series. And I know prior to the Microsoft showcase, we were told that, hey, everything in this event will be in engine footage. And to start off with Fable and not show a proper gameplay demo, granted, I guess that was all in engine.
Mhm.
I was a bit disappointed, but at the same time, I'm really curious to see how this is executed. Just
Mhm.
because from the little we did see from the Fable reveal, it has that dry British humor that, we've come to expect from the Fable games, especially when Peter Molyneux was, at the helm of those games.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure your affinity with Fable, Matt, but when we see just in general, when you see a new developer, you know, studio take on a classic franchise while seemingly trying to hit the same beats that its predecessors have hit, does that do anything for you, or would you have preferred a kind of brand new take to what Fable is, or just in general when something like this happens?
I mean, personally, there are some times I would want a brand new take, but the kind of style that Fable had in, at the very least, 1 and 2, for me, I never really touched too much into 3. I think I like
Yeah.
started it, I never finished it, but I generally liked the style of Fable 1 and 2. I thought they were like charming within in their own way, and I liked the gameplay style of it, and it does seem like they're trying to go back towards that with it is just it's just called Fable,
Yeah,
right?
it's just called Fable, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like they're trying to do that again with Fable, and I don't know. I hope that it holds up to what my expectations for it are, because I don't know. I was actually very surprised that they put Richard Ayoade into that trailer,
Right.
because I didn't, for some reason, Fable to me didn't seem like the type of game that would get a real life actor within the game
Right.
to
Right.
me.
Okay, I kind of know what you're feeling, but I do have at least a stronger connection to something like Fable 2 because that was one of my favorite games. I think
Mm-hmm.
with my Xbox 360 at the time, that was one of the first games I played on that as well. So it did leave a really
Mm-hmm.
good impression on me. And you know me, Matt, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of that fantasy type, world or that story being told, but there was a certain charm to Fable 2 that I especially enjoyed where I do think it has been so long, and I know there have been attempts in the past. Remember that I forget which E3 was it, but there was that Fable. I don't know what kind of sort of not necessarily a PvP game, but there was something that was shown that reminded me of one of those games where you have one person trying to run a dungeon while going opposed to another player who was setting up all the environmental like puzzles and whatnot. And just to kind of see it return to form, I'm really curious to see what Playground Games is able to do with the franchise that has been like long dormant now. And I know some people were saying that, oh, if they're really trying to go back to that well, they'll of course be compared to its predecessors. But again, I feel like it's been so long since we had a proper Fable game where this will be a lot of people's first Fables, especially with the Game Pass support, a brand new audience for them to really make it their own in a way while still kind of having the set pieces or, you know, the familiar blocks that older fans might enjoy. But again, I was a bit disappointed that we didn't really see proper gameplay because, you know, Fable is known for, hey, your choices have consequences. And when I don't even know how long it's been since Fable 3, but when we've had so many games play with that concept of, hey, your choices matter, or on the flip side, at least the illusion of your choices matter, where Playground is known for racing games, and I'm really curious to see how they handle something like a Fable, not only in terms of mechanics and how it feels, but also in terms of the actual, hey, your choices actually mean something, and if we're able to see a evolution of that, considering how many times that has been done in games over the past few years. So I'm really looking forward to gameplay, but still have to admit disappointed that we didn't get to see it here. But Matt, what else from not E3 stood out to you?
I think one of the ones that I fully missed for last week that we could have talked about is Path of the Goddess.
Yes.
Jaren, the trailer for this game is just so wildly mythologically Japanese that I am just instantly drawn to it, and I could not tell you at all how this game is going to play.
So this is coming from Capcom, and Matt, I honestly thought that this was Tenshu's not the game that Capcom does. It's Onimusha, I believe. And I feel like this might have... I thought they were just going to show the Onimusha like logo at the end. This would have been a reboot. But from what I saw in Path of the Goddess, it looked really... It was just visually stunning. Sensory overload once again. And, you know, we've talked about this in the past where we feel like modern Capcom is on such a roll between, you know, what they've done with Monster Hunter, what they've done with the Resident Evil remakes, what they've done with, you know, Street Fighter, where any new game I'm always going to kind of look towards because I feel like modern Capcom hasn't missed so far. I think jury's still out on Exoprimal. I was really disappointed when I thought we would see some new Street Fighter stuff at the Microsoft event, and it turned out to be Exoprimal DLC.
Jared, I hope Exoprimal's good.
I hope Exoprimal is good as well, Matt. But Path of the Goddess, visually at least, looks really great. My only knock against it right now was they showed the trailer during, I believe, was it the Xbox presser?
They actually showed it during what do you call it? Jeff Keighley's thing.
Okay, so it was a Summer Games Fest. And then they also showed the same trailer at the Capcom showcase, where I thought that was really weird, Matt.
Yeah.
If we had to say most disappointing showcase, Matt, I was, as I said, Capcom has been on a roll lately, especially modern Capcom. Not a big fan of their showcase this year, Matt.
Yeah, it was really just a repeat of all old stuff and stuff that was just in the other conferences already.
Which was very weird to me, where it was just disappointing to watch through, and I thought, wow, this was kind of a waste of time, a waste of 37 minutes that I was scrubbing back and forth. But there was something that I was actually surprised about, and Matt, I know when you were listing a few games as well that you wanted to talk about this episode, It was the new Prince of Persia coming from Ubisoft. And
Yes.
I know a few years back we saw that they were trying to reboot the original Sands of Time, or at least remake the original Sands of Time. So I thought it was really surprising that we get to see this side-scrolling modern take on the Prince of Persia. You know, the original Prince of Persia, it was just screaming to me, oh, hey, they're bringing back the side-scrolling for a modern era once again. And that, this actually looked really cool to me. And how are you feeling about the side-scrolling Prince of Persia game?
Jaren, I was kind of actually middling on it.
Really?
Yeah, I think that okay, so for just history on my Prince of Persia, I started on Sands of Time. I never played the original side-scrolling Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
So to see Prince of Persia kind of go to this, I guess back to its roots, I guess it does make sense overall for the Prince of Persia series. But okay, so I just want to start off by saying that I do think that the gameplay itself, the combat and stuff, does look interesting. I do like that the time mechanics they seem to be putting into this game and how it's going to be interacting with their combat system.
Right.
But one of the things that always drew me to Prince of Persia, and especially the 2008, 2009, the remake with the stylish prince and Elika. One of the things I really, really liked about those games is kind of just the kind of parkouring element of them.
Of course.
And I think that it loses that when it goes to the 2D element or version of the game. You really only are limited to basically a long jump and kind of going up and down. You don't have as much, I think, freedom of just exploration with regards to the parkouring.
Yes.
And that kind of being one of the drawing factors for me towards Prince of Persia is kind of what's making me hesitant on the new Prince of Persia. I mean, I'm going to play the new Prince of Persia because I think it is. They said it's going to be on Game Pass as well.
Right.
I might be just imagining that, but
I'm hoping.
I am going to probably give the new Prince of Persia a try at some point.
Okay.
But that is the big concern I have.
I totally know what you mean, where I'm a really big fan of just general parkour traversal in games. I think there's something really satisfying about good free running in a video game, where something like when you go from Mirror's Edge to Watch Dogs 2, just to be able to have satisfying traversal for me is the perfect podcast game to me, just because I like putting on a podcast and just running around, seeing my character just do jumps and climb, good climbing, good jumps. And as much as I love skateboarding, I feel like there's something more freeing to me about just parkour, where when we saw the new skate stuff, the Skate 4 stuff, and they were trying to do more of a parkour element as well, that really made me happy, just because I just love a good free running game. And so far I haven't really got that, I guess, sensation from a 2D game. Not to say that 2D games can't do it, but there's something just more immersive about a good proper 3D free running or 3D traversal that I just find really satisfying, that I don't get from the 2D aspect. And seeing this new Prince of Persia game, as fun as the combat looks and how it seems to be, another, maybe a Metroidvania, but, a side-scrolling action game, I think that's fine. But when you bring up, as you said, Matt, just the third-person traversal, I think, that is something that is going to be missed, because it's something that I don't get from 2D games, unfortunately. But hopefully they're still figuring out the remake of the original Sands of Time. And I think a modern Sands of Time is still something that it can scratch an itch that I have. But yeah, hopefully this new Prince of Persia still hits that side-scrolling action game that I do like. But Matt, speaking about traversal, you listed something else right now. It was a particular collab that I saw as well with Roller Champions and their Jet Set Radio event. And that we're in a time where, Sega said as much, hey, they're trying to bring back Jet Set Radio. They're trying to make it one of their, I forget the term, it was either a mega game, a super game. They want to make their next Fortnite, and arguably, I don't think they're going to be able to do that with the Jet Set Radio franchise, but I'm not sure if I've said it on the Mistake Zone before, but Jet Set Radio Future is Matt. When I apologize, I'm not sure if my mic is picking up my dog having a nightmare. So I feel sorry for her, but it's pretty funny because Matt, we all have nightmares. We all have nightmares. But Jet Set Radio Future is probably, Matt, I might say top 3 game all time for me. There's just something about the style, the movement, and just like the nostalgia for me. And when you have Sega saying, hey, we're going to bring back Jet Set Radio, I get giddy, I get excited. And unfortunately, and of course, I'm still trying to find something to scratch that itch. You know, we have Bomb Rush Cyberpunk coming, Hover, right? Revolt of the Gamers didn't really do it for me a few years ago. But Matt, one, I'll be honest, during the wave, like earlier this year, when all these free-to-play games like closed their services, I thought Roller Champions was one of those titles. So to see if Roller Champions get a Jet Set Radio event, I was not only surprised that this game is still running, but two, that one of my favorite franchises is being reduced to this. So Matt, what did you think of the Roller Champions Jet Set Radio event announcement or reveal?
Jaren, I was just legitimately so surprised to see anything Jet Set Radio related like come out. And Jaren, I've never even touched Roller Champions. I never really had like an interest in really like trying it. But I don't know, Jaren, maybe they got me with maybe just roll up as a beat for a game and see what's up.
Oh man.
Jaren, I don't know anything about this game. Is this game good?
I don't know, Matt. I literally don't know. I just want to see what Sega does with Jet Set Radio. I want to see. I think we've seen, leaked footage of the game, and it was kind of alongside the Persona 3 remake leaks, which was just recently announced again last week or 2 weeks ago, where it just showed me some new Jet Set Radio, man. That's really what I want to see right now. And this Roller Champion, no disrespect to its player base and the dev team, but I don't want normally I like me a good collab event. But here, I just want the source material to get a new entry. And I'm hoping come August, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is able to scratch that itch until we see if Sega can actually execute a modern day Jet Set Radio. Hopefully of the future, variety, just because I prefer Future's gameplay just to base Jet Grind Radio. But, maybe I'll take a look at how this looks in Roller Champions. I saw the beat stuff. I saw Gum, but if I have to be honest, not my favorite Jet Set Radio character. So I don't know how deep they're going into the bag, but you tell me you have Rith, you tell me you have Mew, and maybe I'll take a look. Maybe. But Matt, anything else from not E3 to come to mind?
I think the only other thing for the not E3 stuff that I want to touch on, Jaren, is the Final Fantasy VII remake. I think Rebirth is what it's subtitled as right now.
So this is part 2. And Matt, how did you feel when it said it's on 2 discs?
Jaren, that's wild to me. Like, I understand that maybe they're just doing it for nostalgia, but internally, the first thing that I thought was, guy, a Blu-ray can hold like 120 gigabytes of space. Like, how big is this game going to be?
Matt, if I ever wanted to play this remake and seeing it's on 2 discs, I'm thinking if I was on my old internet, I'd be weeping right now, wondering when I would ever play this game. But as you said, Matt, when it said on 2 discs, I think internally I was thinking, how is it on 2 discs? Yet, to me, it's kind of refreshing to see, hey, here's a game actively promoting it's on discs, considering how often we go to the store, look at the physical game, and it says, "Hey, this is just a download code and some plastic."
Uh-huh.
But Matt, have you played the Final Fantasy VII remake?
No, I have not. I always want to because it does look pretty good. I just never got around to it.
I saw a Tifa combo video, and I thought, oh, this is like nuts. Where I feel like, I'll be honest, man, I don't have the same affinity to Final Fantasy VII as a lot of people do, because that wasn't my defining JRPG experience. That made a really big impression on me. But I've seen a lot of people say that the Final Fantasy VII remake, to them, makes good on what Final Fantasy VII is in their heads. And I'm kind of waiting for a remake that does the same thing to me, because for all the different remakes that I've played, I think maybe Tony Hawk's Pro Skater comes to mind the most, just because when I think about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, at least the original games I played on the PlayStation and the N64, I always thought of what Tony Hawk, the remake, is. To me, like, those are my rose-tinted glasses, and to see it so successful in a modern setting, like, makes me feel good about it. And I'm really envious of the Final Fantasy VII crowd to get to experience something like that, just because, again, when I look at the remake stuff, I think that looks like a cool action RPG that I want to try out, as opposed to, oh my god, this is what I saw back in the day, even though it was just ugly polygons at that point. But there's something curious about this remake that I think you were curious about it too, Matt. And when you have a retelling on such a grand level, you begin to think, how true does it stay to the source material? Because, Matt, when it comes to the Final Fantasy remake, there is, some interesting discourse going around its community that, do you want to kind of explain to our friends out there?
If I'm thinking of the right thing, is that there was a part in the trailer where I believe it was Sephiroth said that he's killed Tifa. Or is that the same thing that you were like hinting at just now, or is it something else?
Essentially, it's the idea, correct? That what if they subvert the expectations, where this is still technically Final Fantasy VII, but they're exploring different story beats. And I think the biggest one is spoilers for Final Fantasy VII. What if, our girl Aerith never died? And how does a concept like that, when it comes to remakes, sit with you, Matt? Just because I feel like Aerith died. Is it Aerith? Ares? Whatever.
Ares, yeah. I'm going to say Ares.
Okay. I feel like her dying is such a pivotal, defining moment in Final Fantasy VII and in so many people's lives, that for you to change that, do you essentially, is that still Final Fantasy VII? But in terms of major story beat change, again, we're not saying this is happening, but the discussion is happening amongst the community. But for you personally, Matt, if something were like that to happen, how would that kind of sit with you?
See, okay, Jaren, I think the thing that is really making me iffy on it is that it's called Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Right.
I think that it being a specifically worded remake makes it, in my mind, okay to have not Ares die.
Right.
Something about that is enough to be like, somebody dies, but it's not Ares. I think if it was called something like, I don't know, like Final Fantasy VII, like remaster, or some kind of word that just is more of a upgraded version kind of idea, I would be far more against them switching it away from Ares dying.
But Matt, what if this was called Final Fantasy VII RE colon Imagine. Would that be good or bad?
Jaren, first off, that would be amazing. And secondly, I 100% would expect Sora to show up in that show up somewhere in that story if it was a reimagine.
Matt, I think I said it before in the mistake zone, but the trope of re colon and then whatever your subtitle is, amazing to me. I love that. I love that so much. But on the flip side, Matt, if everyone's childhood crush Tifa were to die, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I would. In this game, I would be like, that's. The words I was going to say was that's pretty cool, but like not in the way where I'm like, oh, cool, she's going to die.
Yeah.
But, in terms of a storytelling perspective, that'd be a very nice twist.
Right.
Like, it's just Final Fantasy VII, like, alt. And I'd like to see it, like, go down that path.
Again, I think me not having the same attachment to the Final Fantasy VII, game growing up, I feel like if I had that connection, I think the discourse right now would be so thrilling to see. Just because I think the biggest, not necessarily fear, but when you do a remake, when you do a remaster, you're essentially, if it's a one-to-one with, say, updated graphics, some updated, mechanics and maybe some quality of life changes, you're essentially making its predecessor or the original version obsolete in a way. Where I think if the Final Fantasy remake were to do, not only just fleshing out certain areas that you didn't get to flesh out back during its original release, but actually making hardcore story beat changes and subverting expectations where it doesn't necessarily, make the original Final Fantasy VII obsolete. It's one of those things where, hey, this is that reimagination that actually opens up the story to some pretty wild ways where I think the biggest, like the ultimate hope to me, if I was in the shoes of someone who has such a strong affinity, is, oh my God, they're actually tying back to something in the original into this remake that no one really thought of. And I think something like that would be really cool where you go beyond this is just a one-to-one retelling, but this is just something that makes the original game just another piece in this bigger narrative where I think something like that would be really exciting. But again, it's, as an outsider looking in, I can only hope that it does something really drastic to make people not say, hey, you're killing my original game, but just make people genuinely excited of, I can't believe we're exploring something like this. So again, like to me, it's the notion of, hey, maybe if Aerith didn't die, that's a fun meme to me, but if they execute it really well and make it have a good narrative explanation and impact, I think that would be really thrilling, that you can only get from not only long-term storytelling, but having such a rich franchise to draw upon. But we'll see, man. This is just like wish listing on my end, or on my end right now. But Matt, do you think you'll check out the Final Fantasy VII remake? Do you think you'll go back to the first one prior anytime soon?
Jaren, while we were talking about this, I opened up the Final Fantasy VII remake page on Steam.
Yeah.
Jaren, this game is still $93. I don't think I'm gonna go in on this.
Matt, games are expensive, and as much as I want to play Final Fantasy 16, because Matt, it looks good. Some of the videos that came out of the not E3 season makes that just, you know me, I love me a good character action game, and that looks like a good character action game, but don't think buying a PlayStation 5 is anywhere in my near future, and that makes me real sad. So hopefully when Final Fantasy 16 makes its way out to Steam, that's something I'll finally get to try, but making me really regret not having that quadruple with me right now.
Yeah, Jaren, we just gotta wait for Metaphor ReFantazio.
Oh man, I rewatched that trailer. Still wild, Matt. That guy
Still
still
wild.
looks like Marth. That still makes me want another Tokyo Mirage session.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt,
Mm-hmm.
during the not E3 season,
Mm-hmm.
we did see a glimpse of the new Spider-Man game, Spider-Man 2. We
Mm-hmm.
saw we received a release date. We saw our boy Miles. We saw the symbiote suit. And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
as a kid who grew up in the 90s, you know how much I love me a good symbiote suit.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to admit, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I talked about it a bit in a few episodes ago, but if there's one piece of Spider-Man media to come out in 2023 overall that I was looking forward to most, it wasn't, Spider-Man 2, but it was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
you also were able to watch it recently, and I feel like, hey, maybe we should double back and
Yes.
kind of revisit Across the Spider-Verse now that you watched it, and I had some time to let it linger and settle in.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I have to ask you now. I
Mm-hmm.
said when we talked about it a few weeks ago that I went into Across the Spider-Verse knowing it ended on a cliffhanger. And now that you watched Spider-Verse and you knew it was a cliffhanger beforehand, how do you think that made you, I guess, enjoy the movie? Or I guess what was it, having that knowledge, like how did you feel about the movie overall?
Okay, so I think just a general warning right now. I'm pretty sure that we are going to go into spoilers for
Yes.
Cross the Spider Verse. So if you don't want spoilers, you should probably stop listening, or
Or
keep listening but muted so we get the views.
or
But
you can pause. You can pause, go watch Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, then come back and feel like, hey, you're chatting with your pals after you watch the movie.
uh-huh. But Jared, I think knowing that it was a what do you call it? Gonna be a cliffhanger towards the end really kind of helped it for me
Okay.
because there is a certain point where it seems like something wild is about to happen towards the end. I guess I'm just talking about more so when Miles escapes the 2099 universe
Yeah.
and he's kind of just like doing his own thing in Earth 42, and kind of seeing all that shaping together made me realize that holy crap, I would be so pissed if like when it got to the to be continued at the end if I
Right.
didn't know that this was going to be a cliffhanger.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like towards the end when Miles, you think Miles comes back home, he's having that really touching conversation with his mother,
Mm-hmm.
and his mother, quote unquote, and she drops the "What's a Spider-Man?"
Uh-huh.
And Matt, the
Mm-hmm.
gut punch that does is we kind of expect it to happen. I think it's foreshadowed a bit in that scene, especially. But
Mm-hmm.
with that reveal, I think that's when I looked at my watch and I thought, okay, this is roughly 15 minutes before credits are supposed to roll.
Uh-huh.
Where as as impactful as that scene was with Miles's mother and kind of the things that follow, especially with when you're contrasting that to the idea that Gwen is eavesdropping on this conversation and you realize that she
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
isn't.
Mm-hmm.
It I feel like it really picks up at that point. And for it to suddenly cut off in the end, if I didn't know it was going to be a cliffhanger, I could totally see how that would be a really big slap in the face. Just because, as much as I adore Across the Spider Verse, I still think now that I've had time to let it, marinate,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, okay, not a lot, but there are moments in this movie that kind of drag on for me,
Mm-hmm.
where this is a Beefy Boy movie, and as cool as, say, it is in the 2099 universe in that Spider Sanctuary or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
I f- unpopular opinion, but I think that drags on a lot more where
Yeah.
where it is supposed to set up this internal civil war within the Spider Society or whatever it's called. But at the same time, I honestly feel like this is going to sound completely weird, but to me, it didn't feel like there was much at stake considering, we're being told straight up, hey, your world's going to explode or your world's going to perish if, you don't follow the strict,
Mm-hmm.
sadness code of what Spider-Mans are supposed to all feel.
Mm-hmm.
Where I honestly didn't find that compelling at all compared to the end where Miles is all of a sudden a stranger in his own home, and then now he's coming face to face with, Miles Prowler and the
Mm-hmm.
42 Miles, and I thought it immediately picked up that just because I feel like that to me is a better story where
Yeah.
all the Spider Society stuff was Matt, I said it before. This is a Spider-Man fan service movie, and
Mm-hmm.
the Spider Society stuff to me was purely fan service. Where that was there to me again. That was where you see all the different Spider-Men, you see all the different cameos. Matt,
Mm-hmm.
before I finish this point, I gotta say, I feel like me and my partner were the only ones in the theater to pop for Donald Glover.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was brilliant, Matt,
Uh-huh.
considering Donald Glover's history with, Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and, his arguably role or hand in, hey, here's the creation of Miles Morales. Um, just to see him in the Prowler suit, not knowing if this is MCU canon. Speaking of MCU canon, I really like the nod towards Doctor Strange and MCU Spider-Man, which was really
Oh
fun
yeah. Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again,
Mm-hmm.
the as much as they're supposed to build up Spider-Man 2099 as this actual villain, as the actual antagonist, that conflict really didn't do much for me. But it's only when Miles is facing his multiverse self and him being in a world which he, arguably had a hand in destroying for better or for worse. That was more compelling to me. And for it just to come to a sudden close made me almost resent all the Spider cameo stuff. But again, I think that's
Uh-huh.
just me being unfair. But I think one part that I wanted to talk to you about,
Mm-hmm.
Matt, was
Mm-hmm.
is what do you think of the concept in the next Spider-Man movie of subverting expectations? And do you think Miles Prowler might be depicted as more of a anti-hero, and that the Prowler in, Earth 42 is more of a anti-hero than the straight up villain the Prowler is in Miles's hometown or home universe?
I think that's like definitely a possibility, but I do I am like kind of 50-50 on it, on whether Prowler Miles is going to be like a anti-hero like you said, or just a straight up bad guy,
Yeah.
because it does seem like he would still have the same kind of sensibilities that he should have as like our or Spider-Verse's Miles.
Yeah.
So I would expect him to still internally be a good person, because the time difference between those two universes shouldn't really be that much, right? Because what do you call it? It should just be the same amount of time that Spider-Verse Miles had to be Spider-Man. So I
Yeah.
don't think he would like break super super bad from how he was at the start of technically Into the Spider-Verse,
Right.
right?
But it's the concept of, I guess, Prowler Miles's, tragedy trigger of his dad died, and who knows what that does to him and
Mm-hmm.
his like view of the world. But I like the idea that, a big concept, a big theme throughout across the Spider Verse is this role of destiny. where, the big conflict from the Spider Society is, hey, as a Spider-Man, you need to go through all these specific trigger points for you to actually be Spider-Man. We all have to go through this. And if you subvert that, then you're going to do more harm than good. Where I like the idea of flipping that from, hey, a Spider-Man is always destined to have this happen to him, to Miles is always destined to do good or be some sort of hero. Just because Miles 42 doesn't get bit doesn't mean he's unable to rise to,
I see,
something more. And this goes back to the original Spider-Verse where, with him fighting with the Prowler or with his Uncle Aaron, and Uncle Aaron saying he didn't know he had a choice, where I like the idea that 42 Prowler, 42 Miles is someone who is presented with that choice. And what he actually does with that choice is, hey, we need to do better. Because I think when you have the subtle references in the 42 universe of the Sinister Six, where, again, I think that they're kind of building some conflict there of, hey, maybe the two Miles join together to kind of stop this new threat happening to New York at the time. But again, I feel like the last scene, that whole run up with Miles being a stranger in the 42 universe, was done great. I love the production point of when the two Miles finally come face to face when we're introduced to Prowler. He has that red and blue tint to him, and then when it flashes to Miles, he has that red and purple tint to him. Again, with that duality of, it just takes one kind of life-altering moment and your life can go in a completely different direction. But speaking about the ending, Matt, what did you think of the shot of Spider-Gwen assembling her Spider-Friends team to go save Miles?
I liked it. I thought that was a nice, closing shot, getting the ensemble, really setting up the sides, I guess, for the next movie.
Right.
I'm kind of surprised. I understand why the terminal girl is there.
Yeah.
But I was actually surprised to see her as a part of that group.
Right.
Because of how kind of a minor-ish role she played in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would have liked to see, I don't know, maybe a couple more people on Gwen's side, but I have no idea who they would be.
Matt, can I be honest?
Huh?
I hated that final shot of the
really?
Spider-Friends. Matt,
Jared, come on, friendship.
As a movie that is solely based on Spider-Man fan service, I rolled my eyes so much at that final shot of Gwen and her Spider-Friends together. Because, Matt, I'm not against the idea of the Spider-Friends. Actually, I really like that now we have a core group of Spider-Men and women to help fight, essentially 99 and the Spider Society, who is based in friendship or based on destiny, as opposed to bonds, and doing what Spider-Man is supposed to do and just help people, always help people. But going back to that final shot in particular, I thought it was actually really cheap because not only do we see Spider-Punk, we see the Indian Spider-Man, we saw Terminal Go, but we also see Spider-Man Noir. We saw Peter Porker, and of course we see Penny as well. Of course, Peter B. Parker, and just everyone they've met in the past. But I honestly thought that was really cheap, considering we don't see Spider-Man Noir proper in the movie. We don't see Peter Porker proper in the movie. We do get reintroduced to Penny, who seems to have her tragedy moment because her demeanor is way different than what we are used to Spider-Verse.
I honestly think Penny shouldn't even be there.
Really?
To be honest. Yeah, because I feel like she's one of the people who, when Miles finds out that his dad has to die, is one of the people who says it has to happen. So I
Yeah.
feel like she shouldn't be there, even though I guess like Gwen and Peter B. Parker were saying
Kind of
that
talk
as
her
well.
out, or yeah.
But like I understand why Indian Spider-Man is there because or like Miles saved like his like cop thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, my real issue at that end was it was just too like convenient, I guess. Hey, here's Spider-Man Noir, here's Peter Porker, when like they don't really have a role in the movie at all. Even what I would have liked better, Matt. Here's me backseat movie writing. I would have preferred the scene of Gwen, recruiting Peter B. Parker, and she's like, okay, where are we going now? And she's like, oh, we need to get a few more friends. And then maybe them standing in front of a portal that goes into the Noir world.
Oh, I see.
Just to kind of like hint, oh, they're trying to get the band back together. But just to see it like blatant like that didn't sit well with me. I thought that was a bit too on the nose. Where I think a more subtle approach would have been better. But Matt, speaking about the Spider Friends,
yes.
Me personally, I think Spider-Punk, I think Hobby, like show stealer. Like I really like his portrayal throughout this movie. And one of my favorite parts of Spider-Verse is just this whole mangling of different styles and how they all come together, and it kind of works. You would think that a lot of the scenes would be jarring, especially when you're kind of juggling different animation styles and different art styles together. But I think the Vulture fight in the beginning with I guess, what was it? The medieval
Renaissance Vulture?
Yeah, Renaissance Vulture fighting Gwen sets such a tone for the visuals of the movie. Like that really got me in the mood, and it really made me excited just to see how the different, styles will clash. Or not necessarily clash, but complement each other. But Matt, what did you think of the Spider-Man, the Lego segment of the movie?
Jaren, that was a wild segment, especially when, like, did you hear like everything behind that segment?
I had it explained to me recently, but I didn't know. But for our friends out there listening, like, what was the deal with the Lego scene in Spider-Verse?
Okay, so from what I understand, I think prior to or just after, I think, Into the Spider-Verse released, there was some like 13, 14-year-old kid who was just kind of doing stop motion Lego animations, and like I think he redid one of the scenes in Into the Spider-Verse, or did some sort of Spider-Man related scene.
Yeah.
And apparently the producers for Across the Spider-Verse contacted him, and they wrote that scene for him to have a thing in the movie, which I think is like, one, like really cool, and two, was like, oh, neat Spider-Man Lego. I wonder what Spider-Man Legos official Spider-Man Lego sets are gonna be coming out.
Matt, that's like that's the dream, right?
Yeah,
I feel like when we're kids, especially that age, you're dreaming, hey, I'm going to be recognized as a kid for my talent, and I'm going to be, given a platform to kind of express myself. And hearing that story, that's really wild and like really cool at the same time. But I love the little goof for that scene. Oh yeah, Lego Spider-Man's like one of our best agents. But so I guess going back to the Spider-Verse overall, what were some other points or parts of the movie that really stood out to you?
Jaren, I was so glad to see Spot getting used.
Yes.
Like, I think that Spot is one of my favorite power sets in any kind of like Marvel universe, or like any actually superhero story, because I just really, really like the idea of him having the portals kind of. I don't know how much you know about like Spot just as like a character, but did he always have the dimensional traveling thing as a part of him, or was that added for this movie?
I couldn't tell you anything about the Spot now.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like I also generally just like his design. Just because like his design in like Rorschach from Watchmen, like I just really like that kind of simple black and white design, and I don't know, seeing him on here, and also him having I think a similar humor style as Spider-Man was very, very nice to me. Like just the way that they played off each other was like really good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Jaren. I think one thing that also really made me like him, even towards the end of the movie, is that his kind of pure black design with the white kind of spots was very reminiscent to me of the anti-spiral in Gurren Lagann. I was like,
Oh,
neat.
that is neat. That is neat. But Matt, speaking about Spot, I think I see. So when I was kind of sitting on the movie afterwards, I feel like again this goes back to sort of the not necessarily pacing issues of the movie, but in the beginning we have Spot being made out to be this chump. And like his whole goal is to become Miles's, main antagonist, main, foe, main rival, whatnot. And I feel like the movie is at odds with trying to portray who the protagonist is or who the main antagonist is, just because we have all this Spot stuff, but then all of a sudden where it's being tossed aside to, hey, here's Spider-Man 2099, and then he wants, Miles to essentially go against what the Spider-Man code is, which is, hey, with great power comes great responsibility. And all of a sudden it's, we don't want you to be responsible at all. We want you to have someone close die to you just so, you can keep, like, this is how it works. And despite that, you have to let this go. And then at the very end, once again, it's, okay, Miles is in another place and now he's facing off against the Prowler or his other self from another universe, where I feel like it's hard to really settle in on who the antagonist is, just because there's so much going on that as cool as the Spot was, I feel like he doesn't really get his due, despite being told how all powerful he's becoming and how multiverse shattering he is. It's the fact that he plays second fiddle to Spider-Man 2099, and then arguably by the end of the movie he's already third fiddle, despite him already trying to set up a scenario where Miles's dad actually perishes. But at the same time, I think that's kind of poetic in a way and goes to show that Spot just is being disrespected throughout the movie, especially when he becomes this all-powerful being. He's the third afterthought in a movie that is packed to the brim of content. But yeah, I think I was kind of conflicted, where I feel like Spot should be a bigger deal than he actually is presented in the movie, but at the same time I think that's the point. I don't know. I think that's just me.
Jared, I'm just happy to see Spot. Like,
right.
Honestly, he lives in that same area as like Big Wheel in terms of, hey, you know what? Who would be like a good Spider-Man villain for a movie? Like this character. Yeah. And I feel like they would never ever be in that list. Like, seriously. And I don't know. I conceptually just very much like Spot.
Oh man, good character though. Good character. So Matt, we talked about Eris dying. We talked about Tifa dying. Matt, do you think Gwen's being set up to die in the next movie?
I don't know, Jared. I'm really confused on or like kind of like all over the place in terms of what I think is going to be happening in the next movie. Because I think Gwen only dies if Gwen and Miles get together. And I think Gwen knowing about the Spider-Verse makes it such that she won't get together with Miles.
Right.
But I also do feel like Miles is going to have, because I feel like, because it does seem like Gwen is going to Miles with the idea of getting her dad to quit being the police chief, to get him to not fulfill the requirements of the canon event.
Yeah.
And I am now curious to see how they're going to be messing with what a canon event actually is in the next movie.
Right.
Because I feel like if they are able to go with Gwen's plan of making Miles' dad not the police chief, and that removes him from the canon event. That's like one way that I could see it going. The other is that I see that Miles, because there is a whole thing of Miles isn't supposed to be Spider-Man.
Yes.
So there's also the whole, in my head, possibility that Miles 42 is going to go through all the Spider-Man canon events. Right. So that Miles, what is he, 1606 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, like he doesn't have to go through it. So he'll never actually have to deal with the fact that his dad died, because his dad died already in Earth 42.
Damn, probably, if that's the case, probably Miles gets the raw end of the deal there.
Yeah. But then, like, I don't really, like, know, because I feel like there's, like, so many ways that it could go that I can't really decide on the way I would want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I don't, like, what are you feeling for this?
On one hand, I thought, oh, okay, I know the answer to this, because apparently, I didn't really look into this too much, but apparently there's supposed to be a Spider-Gwen spinoff with her, Spider-Woman from the movie, and Matt, my favorite Marvel character, Silk. Matt?
Oh,
Silk, to me, is fucking wild. Where when I discovered Silk's origins, I thought this was the most comic book thing ever. Where I'm not sure if you're aware of Silk's backstory.
I have no idea what her backstory is.
But from what I understand, Matt, remember in, the quote unquote mainline Spider-Man universe, Peter Parker's on a field trip, he gets bitten by a radioactive spider. That's cool. But Matt, what if that spider bit someone else, and that spider bit a young Asian woman who also got spider powers, but for some reason was locked away in a bunker for a few years, and she emerged as someone with an incredible skill set. That's essentially Silk in a nutshell.
Oh.
Where just the idea of, remember this life-changing event to happen to Peter Parker to birth one of, the world's greatest superheroes? What if someone else was conveniently there and it happened to them as well, but she also conveniently was hidden away from society for many, many years?
And that is a very super, like, not super, a comic book ass explanation for somebody.
But yeah, I guess the explanation to that is, Gwen has spent some years in this quote unquote years in the Spider-Man society, where I think a spinoff could be a prequel in a way of, this is Gwen's time in the Spider Society.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But that also brings to the fact of, man, I just hate prequels, because if this does center around Gwen, Silk, and Spider-Woman, we're Silking across the Spider-Verse, unless she's introduced in the upcoming movie. But I don't know. I feel with Gwen specifically, especially with all this talk of canon events, where I could potentially see her being Miles's tragedy to push him forward in like some bittersweet kind of way. And which goes on to again discuss that, okay, maybe this is how Gwen is also kind of destined to be as well, but maybe I'm just kind of overthinking it, because I think Gwen is a strong character throughout the movie. I did like how the beginning of the movie really centers around her as well, and I would be really excited for that spinoff if it were to happen. But Matt, anything else from the movie to kind of stick out to you as we begin to wrap up this episode of The Mistake Zone?
I guess, okay, this isn't specifically from the movie, but Jaren, I want your opinion on, I guess, where the movie goes.
Okay.
Because I want to know what you think with regards to, should, like, regardless of, like, I guess, how the movies, like, play out, like, do you think that Miles should experience the canon event in terms of, like, the story?
In terms of this, the way I kind of see, it's like the Beyond the Spider-Verse kind of playing out is, the exchange between Prowler and Miles, I think either something. I feel like the Sinister Six does play a part in the beginning of the movie, especially with their exchange, and then they have to have this, unholy alliance between the two, and then through that alliance, fighting the Sinister Six, you get a better understanding of each other, and Miles gets a better understanding of the Prowler, and he kind of learns that his misconceptions of Prowler being a villain aren't necessarily true, because part of me really does hope that if there is, Miles is always going to be destined to greatest, and when given the choice, the Prowler will do good if he knows. But so that happens, but then I feel like there's also the Spider friends come, they find Miles, and they end up fighting the Prowler at the same time. And there's a big misconception in Matt. Tell me if you heard this before. I feel like Miles has to fight his spider friends alongside Prowler Miles at some point before it's all resolved as well.
Yeah.
That happens too. Shenanigans happen, and 2099 shows up, and then they all fight together. All I'm saying is Prowler joins the Spider Friends at some point in some way. And I feel like Spiderverse Miles or Spider-Man Miles, I feel like something happens which results in, again, as you said, Matt, the idea that Prowler Miles is the one destined to unfortunately have all these, tragedies happen to him. And I kind of feel like Uncle Aaron bites the dust too in some way. I feel like Uncle Aaron has to go, because I think Prowler still lives on as the Batman in that world. But I'm not sure if they would do this, but kind of flipping the question back to you, Matt, do you think, now that we've seen Spider-Man 2099, having the drive to stick to the script, do you think if nothing organically happens for Miles to have a canon event, do you think Spider-Man 2099 isn't above getting his hands bloodied to make sure a canon event happens? Or do you think that's something too dark for like the Spider-Verse movies?
I feel like 2099 still has like a villainous role to play.
Yeah.
I do think that he will try to push the canon event script. Because I think that one thing of them showing, I believe it was during the Vulture scene, of them showing off 2099's, I guess, like vampire part.
Right.
But throughout the movie, never acting on the vampire part. I almost feel like this next coming movie is they stop Spot, and 2099 vampires his dad.
Oh, okay.
I feel like that's like maybe what happens, because I feel like 2099's role isn't going to be done just because Spot is gone and they've basically like semi-fixed the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I feel like with Spot, he's always going to be destined to play the third fiddle in the especially in Beyond the Spider-Verse, where I feel like they won't give him like the respect he deserves, because he'll probably be defeated instantly. And I think, again, that's kind of poetic to the thing. But kind of to ask your original question, I think through one way or another, Miles will experience a canon event in some way, whether that is Gwen dying, whether that is 2099, actually triggering it himself and harming someone, whether it be, his father, his mother, Gwen herself, or even arguably Miles having the hand in doing something especially wrought into Prowler Miles in that universe again. Like something will happen to further reinforce this idea of, with greater power comes great responsibility. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like Miles has to get some dirt on him in this next movie, like one way or another, just to kind of, but at the same time, Miles's character in himself is trying to kind of go against it. And the idea that you can save everyone, you can have it all, where as much as I want to say a canon event will happen to him, like he'll still try his best to make sure it doesn't, and for everyone to kind of get through. But sometimes, Matt, the world can be cruel.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm really curious how that plays out. But yeah, overall, again, such a fan servicey movie. Really liked all the different callbacks to all the different versions. We even see some of the Sony stuff with like the Venom world being referenced.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, any other cameos seeing the gameplay footage of Spider-Man 2 was pretty funny as well. But Matt, any of the cameos that stood out to you that you wanted to mention?
I can't really think of any off the top of my head, to be honest. Like, other than, I think the Donald Glover cameo was just so prominent for me.
Yeah.
That like it's kind of like overshadowing the other cameos in my head.
That was great. I love that. I absolutely love that. Matt, what did you think of no mid-credit scene nor end-credit scene?
That was weird. Jaren, I don't know if this is just like, okay, Jaren, that seems okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna recompose myself, Jaren. Jaren, in and of itself, I didn't like it. It's just so expected at this point that I was disappointed that it wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But within the context of deviating from canon events that this movie is trying to push,
right,
not having that seemed appropriate for this movie.
Right. Oh man. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. One more. I'm not sure. Did I tell this story when I talked about Spider-Man before? But so when we went to see the movie, during like sometime in the beginning, some teen ran into our theater and yelled, "Spider-Man dies in the end," and then he ran away. Teens being teens. But Matt, I think everyone was quiet, and then like someone out of nowhere was like, "Wait, which Spider-Man?"
Good goof.
But yeah, I think again, visually amazing. I think production-wise, really great. I think a lot of the overall themes, just the notion of Miles's mom telling him that he'll always belong, and even though people will tell him not to, and just that contrasted to how the Spider Society treats him. I'm really excited just to see the conclusion of this trilogy, and seeing what other spin-offs might come from here, because Matt, if there's one thing the Spider-Verse movies have taught me, is they know how to give proper respect to the characters involved in it. Again, Matt, can't stress this enough. Spider-Punk hobby, great. I'm really want to see, and I kind of really hope that they flesh him out a bit more just to see how he comes to join the Spider Society. Again, I think it is him trying to look out for Gwen, so I think seeing a meeting between those two would also be fun as well. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how it goes. And Matt, my last question to you. Did you see it 4DX?
I did not see it in 4DX. I didn't. I honestly, Jaren, the theater that's near me that we went to go watch Fast and the Furious in 4DX, Jaren, I don't like that parking lot. Yeah,
that parking lot's kind of rough. That parking lot's rough.
That was enough to make me not want to watch it in 4DX. I just went and watched it in IMAX.
Okay. IMAX is still pretty good. Matt?
Yeah.
Are you making the pact? Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse 4DX? I'll drive.
Yo, I'm down. I'm Jaren, I'm down.
Okay. Matt, I hate that we've become 4DX shills here in the mistake zone.
Yo, Jaren, it's fine. Yo, Jaren, 4DX is a quality product. I'm just going to go in there and say it right now.
It's an amazing experience, Matt.
Yeah.
And Matt, our experience in the mistake zone this week has come to an end. As always, Matt, I want to thank you for joining me this week and also editing and putting together the pod.
Yo, Jaren, thanks for hosting the podcast as usual, man.
Thanks, friend. That's really not doing anything, but thank you for trying to make me feel included. I want to thank Gundam models. I want to thank Nendoroids. I want to apologize to Hafumi yet again. I want to apologize to all my Nendoroid friends. Matt, canon-wise, this is the first time I revealed out loud that I broke a Nendoroid. And canonly, my Mistake Zone HQ for Nendoroids didn't know that happened, and now they do, Matt. Now they do. You hate to see it.
Jared, you ever wonder what if there was like a multiverse, what your canon events are?
Breaking a Hifumi figure, obviously.
But Jared, does it have to specifically be a Hifumi?
Oh, damn!
You have to break a figure when you're moving from one headquarters to the other,
and it forces me to grow up and be and do it myself to make sure that it's fixed, because you can never replace your first one, Matt. That's a sad canon event.
Because Jaren, what if in this universe you learn how to work like plastic, but in some alternate Jaren verse you broke a wooden like figure, so there you learn woodworking.
And I'd have a beard and flannel, Matt. Man, across the Jaren verse would be really boring.
Jaren, there's one of those where you finally you really did take off on the YouTube video creation scene in the early 2000s.
Oh God, no, man, we all did it. We all did it. Man. On the flip side, there's us. There's a universe where we have an amicable breakup where it's civil, and there's one where I get a big ego and.
Oh man!
Now, can I say something mean?
Huh?
There's a universe where Jaren becomes Donald Glover and the rest of our production becomes the rest of Derek Comedy.
Oh, man.
Successful in their own right, but I still remember that one time I saw... This was before Donald Glover became really big. This was when he was still doing his tour was half Childish Gambino, half his music stuff, but half like stand-up. And I remember at the end of the the show, he would chill in the parking lot and just talk to everyone, sign some stuff. And I remember I remember going up to him and saying, it's like, oh, hey, I'm just a big fan, not really much. I didn't really have anything to sign. I was just wondering if I just wanted to say hi to him and whatever. And then I think right after, a girl kind of jumped in and he's like, oh, can she sign this? And he was like, yo, and chill. Like, I'm just talking to my guy here. And he was like, yo, what's up? I'm like, yo, do you still talk to the Derek Comedy guys? And he was like, Matt, at that moment, Donald Glover paused and he did that thing where when you think and you look down. And Matt, he said, damn, I haven't talked to those guys in a minute. And Matt, that broke my heart.
Damn.
That legit broke my heart.
Oh, man.
Where I'm glad we're not in the universe where our late 2010s production didn't take off. And we're all not friends, but I'm glad we're here in the Mistake Zone verse talking about Donald Glover making me sad.
Oh, man.
But Matt.
Oh, Jared, that makes you sad.
Don't worry. He signed some guy's block of cheese soon afterwards, which was kind of funny.
Nice.
But Matt, please take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of canon events.
Damn, man, what? I hope he calls up his Derek Comedy pals.